The Cedo is one of the, if not even maybe the most popular shotgun in the entirety of Warframe. It is super strong, everybody loves it, and you should totally have a copy for yourself, just not now. So, in today's video, I'm gonna tell you everything about the Cedo, how it works, how to build it, and of course also, why getting it right now might be a pretty bad decision. As always, big shoutouts to all of our generous channel members. Follow me on Twitch, link in the description. Yes, that is new in 2025. And with that being said, let's jump right into it. Now, as with every weapon guide on this channel, the first thing we need to talk about is, of course, how the whole thing even works. See, the Cedo is a fully automatic shotgun with two different fire modes. The base fire is a very precise 6-pellet fully automatic shotgun fire. It does have a healthy magazine size of 40 rounds, a relatively slow fire rate just shy of 4 rounds per second, and also it does have a noticeable recoil, which shouldn't be all too much of a problem. Either you can mod for it or you just ignore it entirely. In terms of damage here, nothing really special. You have a healthy crit performance with a 20% chance, so you can definitely build for it, and a 2.4x multiplier, which is very nice. However, the status chance per projectile might as well just be 0 because that's not gonna happen today. However, one thing I should also say is that the primary fire of the Cedo is not the main selling point of this gun. Rather, it is the alt fire, which is a very special thing that we don't see all that often in Warframe. Let's talk about it. When you hit the alt fire button on the Cedo, what's gonna happen is this shotgun is gonna fire a glaive that homes in on enemies, bounces towards other enemies or around in the scenery, and whenever it hits, it does a whole lot of things. First off, whenever it hits something, be that a surface or an enemy, it's gonna create an explosion with a 6-meter radius and no damage drop-off whatsoever. And this explosion is an absolute status beast, force proccing 2 separate status effects every time it occurs on all the enemies it hits. The first one of these status effects is based on what you've modded onto your Cedo itself. However, the second one is the more interesting one. That one deals a randomized status effects from the base elements, those being toxin, cold, electricity, and heat. However, if you think that's cool, that wasn't even it, because if you mod multi-shot on the weapon, then it is very much possible to shoot multiple glaives at the same time with the alt fire, each and every one of them force proccing all different kinds of elemental status effects with every explosion, meaning with the Cedo, you're gonna turn the whole room inside out. Now, you might be thinking this is all nice and well, some status priming is always appreciated, but is that already it? Well, as it turns out, no, because the Cedo also has a very strong special trait, and that is that for every different type of status effect that is on the enemy that you're attacking, you're getting a 60% damage bonus against that enemy. So, in other words, it does the same thing as Conditioned Overload or Galvanized Savvy if you want to talk shotguns. In fact, if you put Galvanized Savvy onto the Cedo, then the 60% from the Cedo special bonus plus the 40% that Galvanized Savvy gives you will stack additively and lead to plus 100% damage for every different type of status effect on the enemy, which is insane when you consider how many of those status effects you're gonna deal to everybody around. But we all know too well, when we're talking about Condition Overload, we have to dig a little bit deeper because this is probably the most inconsistent mechanic in the entire game. So, how does it look for the Cedo? Well, first of all, as I just said, Galvanized Savvy plus the special effect of the Cedo are the same thing and stack additively together to a plus 100% bonus. This bonus damage, all in all, is base damage as intended, so nothing special just yet. However, there is an exception, and that is when your alt fire, meaning the glaives that you shoot out, when they directly impact an enemy, then on this direct hit, this damage bonus is actually not considered base damage and multiplicative to base damage, which would be really good if that glaive would actually deal some significant damage on direct impact, which it does not, so don't think about it all too much. In reality, you're not really gonna benefit from it. Also, and this should definitely be said here too, the AoE portion of the damage from the glaive explosion, this will not benefit at all from the condition overload mechanic, so that's not really something you should build for. The explosion is really only there for the status priming and application. Whew, now that was quite some input, and you would be forgiven if your ears are smoking now. So what's the summarized take-home message here? Well, when you're playing the Cedo, the main way you do so is by applying status effects to the enemies with the alt fire first, and then you switch to your normal fire, dealing damage to the status primed enemies, benefiting from this massive damage bonus. That's really all there is to it. And just by the way, if you could maybe consider giving the video a little like, that would be very nice because it helps me big time with the YouTube algorithm, so cheers so much for your support. Before we go into the build though, let's first also quickly talk about how you can get the Cedo for yourself and why you shouldn't do so right now. First off, the Cedo is relatively easy to obtain. You can get the blueprint as well as the components from the Intrati family from Father as soon as you've reached the maximum level there, and then you just build it in your foundry. Now, the reason why you can do that, but definitely shouldn't invest forma or potatoes into building the weapon right now is that in the next Warframe dev stream at the end of January, they will announce the next Prime Warframe, and we're all pretty sure this is going to be Lavos Prime, which means that because the Cedo is Lavos' signature weapon, we're also going to get the Cedo Prime probably very soon, meaning investing now into building the objectively inferior version of it is probably going to be a waste of resources. Better wait a couple more weeks until you can get your hands on the Prime version. But with all that being said, let's now finally talk about the build, where the first thing I want to talk about is what actually not to do on the Cedo if you want to get the best performance out of it. See, one thing that makes sense on most weapons in the game, but not on the Cedo, is modding for base damage. I'm talking about base damage mods like Point Blank or even Prime Point Blank, or also base damage arcanes, which even though they give you a massive 360% base damage bonus, still are basically worthless if you compare them to all the base damage bonuses that you're gonna get from this innate condition overload effect on the Cedo in combination with a galvanized status chance mod. That's gonna be your source of base damage, so don't use anything else for that. Next, what I also did is I tried the new Primary Arcane Primary Crux, which would not only increase your ammo efficiency, but also massively increase your status chance, and at first glance I was thinking this might be nice, specifically considering the status heavy alt fire, but this actually doesn't make any sense because the status effects that are being dealt by the alt fire explosion are guaranteed status effects, meaning no matter how high your status chance is, you're always gonna get the 2 guaranteed status effects, and beyond that, you're not gonna get any meaningful performance out of this. With that being said though, let's now get into what you actually want to use on the Cedo, and why don't we just start out with the Arcane slot right away, where I would personally recommend going either for Primary Blight or for Primary Frostbite. Both of these arcanes are being triggered by inflicting either Toxin or Cold status effects, which is very easy because due to the alt-fire explosions dealing the 4 base elements, you're pretty much gonna have these arcanes up all the time, and they give you a huge crit damage as well as multi-shot bonus. Just one thing to keep in mind here, ideally, you should use Arcane Avenger on your Warframe or use some other form of flat crit chance bonus, because you really want to have the Cedo at least at 100% crit chance to really get the maximum out of the crit damage bonus that those arcanes give you. As for the mods, well, the first thing I would definitely recommend would be Galvanized Savvy, giving you more status chance, which isn't all too important to be fair, but the additional 40% damage bonus for every individual status effect stack really nicely with the unique effect of the Cedo itself, so that's definitely a damage bonus you don't want to miss out on. Same goes for Galvanized Hell. More multi-shot is pretty self-explanatory, right? You shoot more bullets, deal more damage, and it also affects the alt-fire, meaning you have more glaives bouncing around, more alt-fire explosions, more status effects being dished out. Next, we go for a primed faction damage mod, which is always a nice option. And then I personally like to go for viral, just because it weakens the enemies and makes them even more susceptible to all the damage you're dishing out. And when it comes to that, you're relatively free to combine your viral in any way you like. You could just go for 260/60s, but given the fact that you're already dealing so many status effects, I decided to go for primed Chilling Grasp and Contagious Spread to have the maximum damage possible. Now, the final mod slot here is kind of a flex slot really. If you wanted to have even more damage, you could add something like, for example, Primed Charge Shell, giving you plus 165% more elemental damage on top of the viral that you already have. You could go for Shotgun Barrage, giving you more fire rate, but my personal favorite here would be the new mod Magnetic Strafe that was added with Warframe 1999. This one gives you magnetic damage and 40% fire rate at the same time, which makes it great in multiple ways. First off, it's a great midway between more damage and more fire rate because it gives you a bit of both, and I personally find 40% more fire rate is enough to make the Cedo quite comfortable to play. However, given the fact that you didn't have magnetic on the weapon just yet, this not only means you get a bit of magnetic damage into the mix, but also because you have a totally new element now, that means you get one additional unique status effect with your alt fire, and that then means on top of the magnetic damage that is already displayed on the mod, it also means that you get even more base damage bonus from the unique trait of the weapon plus Galvanized Savvy. This right here then would be the full build that I personally like to play on the Cedo. Just keep in mind that, as I said previously, if you use Primary Blight or Frostbite, make sure to go for Arcane Avenger or some other form of flat crit chance bonus to make sure you have 100% crit chance and can therefore fully benefit from the crit damage bonus of those arcanes. And if you now want to know even more about all the new mods and arcanes that came with Warframe 1999, then don't miss this guide right here. Another massive shout out to Niels V, Demonlord Zell, Demon Emperor, Emperor Prime, Noslinix Gaming, Turtlepeer, Lycon Shepherd, Undercanio2, Pepperwolf, Mihawky, Yagis, Hockey Hunter, Noob Phoenix, and all other generous channel members for your continuous support. We see each other, hopefully in the next one, and until then, as always, good loot.